Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Dylan Napoleon here, joined by Combat FC's own matchmaker, Rick Caldwell. Rick, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Saw you just a couple days ago at BKFC here in Connecticut, but now we get to catch up tonight, Friday night, about Combat FC 7 happening in what, just about a week and a half. Yeah, a week. Next
Week from
weekend, week from today. You're right.
yeah, we will be live on Fight Pass right now, 7 days from now. So coming up.
7 days from now, the Combat FC 7 main card will be going on Fight Pass. That's right, Memorial Day weekend. There's no way better than spending it at Combat FC 7. If you ask me, Rick, you've put together an amazing card. And man, I know you're pumped to see it all play out. The fighters are as well. 3 title fights, 3 world championships on the line. How do you feel about this card?
It's awesome. It's a really, really strong card, and um, I talk about this every time I'm on a podcast. The thing as a fight fan, when I decide which UFC pay per views I'm going to buy, it's not just the main events that I look at. It's how deep is the card top to bottom, right? Because if on a pay per view card, if I like the main event and co main, but the other three fights I don't really give a shit about, I don't usually buy that one. So that's just me as a spoiled fight fan, right? I want to see 4 or 5 fights. I watch the prelims of the fights that I'm really into. I don't watch every prelim, on every UFC card because
Right.
there's just so many, right? So when I look at our cards, I kind of look at it the same way, right? Like I want to try to match something that top to bottom is interesting and not just you know 2 or 3 fights sprinkled in that are interesting with the whole bunch of other ticket sellers in between, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to put together a card that um you know as fights drop as they inevitably do, I want to make sure that everything we put on fight pass are all
Yeah.
fantastic fights. So yeah, I'm excited about this one. I mean, I think top to bottom this is the strongest card we've ever had. So um
I was gonna ask you how this one ranks amongst other Combat FC cards. In my opinion, definitely very high, and glad to know yours too. But Rick, I feel like every time we talk, one of the things that really highlights Combat FC and the matchmaking behind it is the fan in you, right? Because every time we talk, you always tell me how the fan in you literally helps put together the cards, and you being a fan and a matchmaker, you're able to weigh those two out, balance between the two, and put together amazing cards. And one thing that really stands out to me, at least about this card, is you have a lot of returning fighters. A lot of them fought on Combat FC 6, and that's a special thing, not only for the promotion but for the fighters. For the promotion, obviously, it's amazing because you have guys who want to return and want to fight for you consistently at every event. And for the fighters, obviously they're comfortable. They like coming to you. You put together good shows. They're feeling the benefit of performing in front of the Wilmington fans. What makes Combat FC so special? What makes it so easy to get these guys to come back and fight, show after show?
there's probably a few different things, but I would say one of the things that we do, what I hear from everyone consistently, is that we communicate better than everybody else. So I I respond to every call and text message that I get, right? Every Instagram DM that I get, and even if it's someone that I don't know that we're going to be able to get on a card, I'll at least tell them, hey, I don't know that I'll have anything for you on this one. But all the fighters that fought on this card, that fought on the last one, like for example, Josh Medeiros and David Giuliano, they both fought on the last one. They're going to be fighting on this one. I know we're going to talk about that fight later, but um, they were guys that I was communicating with, within a week of the last event, just checking
Right.
in. Hey, are you looking to fight on the next one? Let's stay in touch. Thanks for coming. Thanks for fighting for us. And it might not be them directly, it might be their manager, but you get the idea. It's I'm always reaching back out, and I've heard from many fighters that they reach out to some of the other promotions trying to get on cards, and it can
Doesn't
be
work out. Yeah.
yeah, it can be a couple weeks of no messages, and then they'll get a message with a fight offer, right? I I don't just reply to people or message people when I have an offer and need an answer. If someone, anyone who's ever fought for me messages me about anything, I reply to every single message, whether I have something for them or not. So
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? Because there's so many other shows in the area. A lot of these guys, a lot of them are just looking to fight. They're looking to stay active. So I think there's certainly benefits, right? I think,
Right.
we have a big crowd. The production's great. We're easy to deal with. We're not paying guys shit money. So, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of guys that, if you're trying to get to the UFC, yeah, you want to be fighting on UFC Fight Pass, right? So there's a lot of benefits, but I think above and beyond all that, I don't mean to tell the other promoters like how to steal my fighters, but like message people and respond back to them quickly if they
Yeah.
message you back. Like,
Yeah.
it's not brain surgery, man. It's crazy. Like, you wouldn't believe how many guys I talk to are just like, they'll say, you guys are
It's hard
so
to
easy
get
to deal
fights.
with.
Yeah.
They'll say it's hard to get fights and you guys are so easy to deal with. Like, it's great. I ask you about a fight and you always, get
Yeah.
right back to me. And it's like, I think that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
kind of a prerequisite. You got to, right? You have
Definitely.
to get back to people if you don't want people thinking you're an asshole. So,
Right up. Yeah. No,
um,
you're right. So there's one of your tricks, Rick.
I
What
think
else
that
you have?
helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, I think we do a good job of, even the guys that are on the card, like even, the B-side guys,
Hmm.
like they, like none of these guys are idiots, right? I want to start there, right?
Right.
Anytime you're offering a guy a fight, they can pull up Tapology, they can pull up, YouTube, like they know what you're offering them. So
Right.
if you're offering them a fight that's like a complete dog shit fight, they're like, in some they get offended, right? They're like, what the like this fucking guy's not offering me a real fight. This guy's wanting me to come in and just get smashed by a ticket seller.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that, I know I've talked about that on prior podcasts. I think that's something that we do better than a lot of the other shows. I
Yeah.
think we see a lot more of our B-side guys win, and like that's not a mistake, right? We're not trying to go out and find, the easiest fight for our ticket sellers just to get them another win. We're trying to actually build out competitive fights, and
Yeah.
like with, again, I'll stick with the Giuliano example, right? Like, he's a guy that comes in from out of town, so he's, kind of a traditional B-side guy on other shows. He was put in a fight that he knew was going to be a competitive fight in the last one.
Yeah.
I think it was the second round. He won by knockout,
Yep.
and he's fighting Medeiros, who's a guy that he thinks he matches up well with. And
Absolutely.
like and I'm offering him, a fight with a guy with a similar record, actually a little less MMA experience.
Right.
So, if there's a betting line on that fight, it's pretty close to 50-50.
Yeah.
I mean, neither guy's going to be an overwhelming favorite. So I think it can be easier for us to get some of these guys because they feel like we're offering them fights that aren't completely lopsided, and
Absolutely.
instead of offering, I don't know, I don't even want to throw out a name, but whoever instead of, I'll go with someone on this card, right? Instead of saying to Giuliano, instead of offering him Carlos Lazoya, it's, a guy with a similar record,
Right. Yeah.
and so I think that's the reason why a lot of guys keep coming back,
Yeah.
and we see a
Definitely.
lot of the same B-side guys, a lot of the same out of town guys, because they like the matchups they're getting. Win, lose, or draw, they know that it's going in. They feel like it's a fight that they can win. They're not being brought in to
Yep.
come in and lay down for anybody. So
Yeah, I
um,
think that makes you guys stand out quite a bit, and it really is. It's true. Every fight is pretty much very evenly matched, and every B side, using that term loosely, is definitely a high. They have a high chance of winning just as well as the A side in the fight. But for those of you guys who are just joining us, We appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Myself, Dylan, Napoleon, and Combat FC's matchmaker Rick Caldwell are here to talk about the upcoming Combat FC 7 card going on just a week from today up in Wilmington, Massachusetts. We're here to give a live breakdown, complete discussion of the card. And Rick, one more thing I wanted to highlight with you just before we jump into this amazing card that you've put together for May 24th. Tonight, a Combat FC veteran and champion and Nate Grieb will be taking on the LFA cage out there in California. For you guys, this has to be kind of an exciting moment, something you got a guy to a bigger stage, and now hopefully making his last walk in a regional scene, and
You better be.
hopefully earning his shot in the UFC. That's the goal for New England's Nate Grieb tonight. What do you have to say about him, and what you're hoping to see from him tonight?
I just want to start by saying I love that fucking guy. Like he's such a cool guy. Like again, there's nobody that's fought for us that I can say I dislike. But there's like he's definitely in like that kind of top 5% in terms of like guys that I truly enjoy having a conversation with. I've had long conversations with him about just, whether it's fights or the business of fighting and potential opponents other places, or, when he was getting ready for the Ultimate Fighter, we were talking about some things, around that.
Yeah.
And I just really like the guy. So I want to start there. And it's, and he's just had such bad luck. It's just for people that don't know, he was actually flown out to the Ultimate Fighter, and he thought he was going to get on Contender Series last year. He was getting, he was getting all the right signs from them, and the tough thing is, I don't know how many people are on Contender Series, but I'm gonna make up a number here. Like if there are 100 guys that get on, there's probably 200 guys that they're talking to that are right there, and hey, we might be able to get you on this season. We'll let you know. So it's not like he's the only one, but
Right.
he thought he was going to get on Contender. He probably should have been on Contender last year. It didn't happen for him. Then it looked like he was potentially going to get a short notice fight. He actually was offered a short notice UFC fight, but the timing was wrong. It was very short notice, and he wasn't anywhere near weight at the time, right? Like it was, he wasn't in camp, so it was not the right opportunity for him. I think it would have been a great fight for him too, but it was not. Again, it was not the right opportunity, and
Right.
I think it was smart for him to not show up and miss weight and kind of have his UFC career start that way, right? So he made the smart decision there, and then he was brought out to the Ultimate Fighter. I think he was the best guy on the show. I'm being completely frank with you there. I'm not, and that's not me being biased. I think when you guys watch the show, you'll see. The UFC changed things kind of last minute. They went from the guys who were supposed to, like, they had a whole cast of guys that were supposed to be on, and then they kind of changed things towards the end, where it was going to be more of like one guy per country, so kind of like
Right.
a World Cup type theme. And
Yeah.
some of the other guys from other countries were 135ers, but they happen to be the best guy from their, the kind of the closest thing from their country. So I'm sure it'll make for a really interesting show, and I'm sure it'll be a cool season.
Right.
But I mean, if Nate wasn't the best guy on the show, he was easily the second best guy in his weight class, right? So, but he was sent home as an alternate. They said, hey, yeah, you're an alternate, but so which basically means when they tell you you're an alternate, you're heading home. It's and you're not likely to be on the show. So yeah, he wasn't able to get on. So he spent like a year
Waiting for it.
Yeah, like hey, you're right there. Like, yeah, we're gonna use you. And even on top of that, he had the Don Shanis fight booked on our show. He was supposed to fight for our 145-pound belt on the last one. And like 10 days before the event, they told him he was on the show, so they told him to pull out of that fight.
Yep. Which he did.
And that's
Yeah.
so he pulled out of that fight and then wasn't on the show. So and this is a guy who's like, he doesn't have a job. Like, this is what he's doing for a living, and he didn't fight for a year. So it's a tough situation, right? And I don't mean it to come across like, oh, he's getting screwed, right? Like I don't think like the UFC has it out for him or anything. I just think there's been some situations that kind of didn't go his way, right? And there's been a handful of them. So I think I think we're gonna see Nate look as good as he ever has tonight. I think he's gonna look better than ever. I don't know if you've seen any of the photos of him, if you've seen him in training, but I mean, you can even see it in his face. Like
Yeah,
he looks like he's in phenomenal shape.
yeah.
Like
He's been
yeah,
out there at American Top Team in Florida, moved his whole life out there, probably about just under 2 years ago, I'd say, probably a year and a half ish. And, trying to represent New England to the best of his abilities. And obviously, training there at American Top Team with the guys out there, you can only imagine, you know, how much better he got just from being there in that short span of time. So, yeah, New England definitely rooting for Nate Grieb tonight in his LFA debut out there in California. LFA 184. Rick, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Obviously, Nate being a Combat FC veteran, someone who's close to the promotion, held a championship belt for a while too. And yeah, man, I appreciate it. I think a lot of New England should be rooting for Nate Grieb tonight.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
Definitely. Well,
Probably
let's
about an
get
hour or so. He'll be on.
yeah, so hopefully we'll get to tune in and check that out.
Yeah,
But Rick, obviously we have an amazing stacked night of fights in line for May 24th at the Shriners Auditorium. Three title fights, action packed card you guys have set up for UFC Fight Pass, and the prelims, the amateur card is top to bottom. Is this card is going to be amazing. I wanted to get started with the amateur card, Rick. I know you put a lot of time into building that as well. So why don't you tell us about two or three of the most exciting amateur fights that you've got for us?
okay, cool. Yeah, so we've got 5 amateur fights on the card. Um, the first one I want to mention, I just think this is really cool. Um, this is the first time it's ever happened for us. I'm not sure if it's happened on anyone else's show, but we've got our first second generation fighter fighting for us. So Robbie Roberts was a staple on the local scene for many years, had 25, 30 pro fights, something like that. Robbie fought for us many times years ago under the WCF banner. And, we came back a few years ago, rebranded as Combat FC. And, he mentioned that, he had some guys from his gym. He's training some people now. And he mentioned, hey, I've got some guys that are looking to make their amateur debut. And one of them was a kid named Xander Roberts. And I said, oh, is he related to you? And he said, yeah, that's my son. So
Wow,
we've got a guy he fought for us a bunch of times, and now his son is making his amateur debut with us. Um,
that's super
and
cool. That's awesome.
yeah, he's got a cool name too. Xander's his name, so Robbie gave him a pretty cool name.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, he was an athlete. He had some wrestling in high school. I think he played football and things like that. So he's still a pretty young kid. I think he's only 19 years old. So
Oh
he's
wow.
kind of fresh out of high school, but um, good athlete. Similar to Robbie. Tall, skinny. He's fighting a guy named Brian O'Neill, and Brian was supposed to fight for us, I don't know, 3 times, I think. And this
Wow.
is Brian's debut as well, and it sucked, right? So Brian had someone, on our very first show. Um, the kid's brother lost an opponent, and then when his brother didn't have a fight, and this isn't Brian, I'm talking about his opponent. His
Hmm.
opponent said, "Well, my brother and I have been training for this moment together, and it just wouldn't feel right to fight without him. So if you don't find an opponent for my brother, I'm not fighting either."
Jeez.
And it was like, okay, well, that's fucking stupid. And so, on 4 or 5 days before the event, Brian lost an opponent. We couldn't find anyone for him. I mean, filling amateur fights on short notice is tough
Right.
because guys are fighting for free, right? So
Right.
it's not like I can like throw them an extra 300-400 bucks and then they're like, yeah, fuck it, I could use the money, like just hey, do you want to fist fight somebody in 4 days for free?
Right.
It's hard to fill amateur fights on short notice. So he wasn't able to fight on that one. And then the next time he came back, he had something on his, like, just above his belt line that looked like staph, but it wasn't staph. He had a note from his doctor saying he was clear to fight, but
Uh-huh.
it was like he had like a little bit of pus coming out of, I don't know what it was, but
Mhm.
It wasn't anything major. But the doctor was like, I can't let you fight with an open wound, and I can't let you wear a bandage. So like he pulled the fight at weigh-in. So
Yeah.
again,
You
so
got
so
unlucky there.
Brian's a guy that's been wanting to fight for us. I mean, it was our very first show that he lost the opponent due to the brother not wanting to fight him.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of been a long time coming for him to get in there. And Brian's a really solid grappler. Um, I haven't seen his stand up, but I know I've talked to a lot of folks who are impressed with his grappling. And again, I know Xander did some wrestling, so should be a really fun fight between a couple first timers.
Yeah.
Another one that I want to talk about. I mean, this could be fight of the night, honestly. Bray and Nichols and Tom Duffy. Um,
Yeah.
they
Nichols was
both
on the
just
last show, right?
he was supposed to be on the last show. So there were
Okay.
a couple guys
Oh,
named
yeah,
Nichols.
he was
So
booked, yeah.
he was booked, but his opponent fell out. And Duffy fought actually one of Nichols' teammates. And in that fight, Duffy was looking to keep it standing and trade, but he kept getting taken down. And he the guy that he was fighting was a purple belt, so I mean he was a little bit outgunned on the ground, right? It was
Yep.
still a good fight though, very good fight, and the decision went the other way. But I mean, Duffy's one of those guys that likes to get in there and bang, right? He
Yeah.
likes to get in there and throw, and Brain's the same way, Brain Nichols. So I mean, these are two guys that like to go out there and crack and kind
Yeah.
of fuck guys that were better on the ground than them in their first fight or two. So it's I'm excited to see these two guys go in there and
Yeah,
brawl with each other. So that
should be a good stylistic matchup. Two guys, they have unique styles, and they've been looking to fight guys with that kind of style too. So it looks
right.
like they got a good matchup right here.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. And the other amateur fight that I'm really excited about, Blaze Nichols. So Blaze is 2-0. He's had a tough time getting fights. Not I don't think people are necessarily avoiding him, but I think in the amateurs, as you start to win, multiple fights, it can be a little bit harder to match you up than some of the other guys. And really, really good grappler. He's out of Kyle Bokniak's gym, and he's fighting a guy named Eric Moeller, who's out of Sean Santella's gym down in New Jersey. And Eric's 3-1, super tough guy. So that'll be a fun amateur fight. Of course, I just dropped my pen here. So so that'll be a fun fight between those two guys. And and after we've got a total of 5 amateur fights, and then we're right on to the pros. So
Absolutely, yeah. So, without further ado, Rick, let's get started with some of these pro fights. I mean, I've been excited to talk about each and every single one of them. I think you put together an amazing, well-rounded card. 3 title fights is pretty significant, if you ask me. But let's get started with the first one here, and that would be Aaron Trussell taking on Derek DeFritas. Both of these guys have fought in the Combat FC cage before. And man, I think this is an awesome matchup. Obviously, Aaron Trussell comes into the fight at 4-5, whereas DeFritas comes in at 3-7. So both of them looking to get their wins up, add more to the win column, and even out those records. But these guys, it's sad, the perception of records really in MMA, because Aaron Trussell is one of the hardest hitting guys I've seen fight around here, man. And
he's one of the most exciting guys out here. Yeah.
absolutely, it's
Yeah.
good.
One quick correction on Derek
Yeah.
though. So Combat Reg has his record incorrect. So if you look at him on ShareDog, he's actually 8-7. So he actually
Okay.
just won a fight. Yeah, he just won a fight in Brazil by first round submission back in November. A lot of the foreign fighters, their
Yeah. The
records
records.
are just they're all over the place
Yeah.
because a lot of the databases don't pick up a lot of the international fights, right? So
Yeah. So eight
and
and
how could
seven.
they? Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's 8-7. But again, so they're both
Yeah.
one fight away from 500, right? Like
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Both.
I kind of view this one as a kind of a classic striker versus grappler matchup, right?
Yeah.
So, Derek's really good on the ground, and he's had some tough matchups, right? Like the first time he came up and fought for us, we couldn't find anybody to fight Beksad Abdurrahmanov.
Yep.
For those people that don't know, Bexod won a bronze medal in wrestling in the last Olympic Games. So, he's the reigning bronze medalist in his weight class, and I believe he's wrestling in the next Olympic Games as well. So he's got he tech falled Jordan Burroughs at one
Yeah.
point. Like he's an incredible wrestler. We couldn't find anybody to fight him, right? And on top of that, he was 6-0 in MMA 10 years ago. He was just killing people. He was head kicking people and shit, right? So like he looked like he could be a phenomenal prospect, right? So nobody wanted to go anywhere near it, and Derek was like, "No, I want that fight, absolutely." Like he asked for it, and
Wow.
oh yeah, he absolutely wanted it. So yeah, he ended up getting overwhelmed in that fight. Bexod's wrestling was on another level. But again, really no shame in losing to that guy. And then in his next fight, he fought Jan Oliveira, and he got Jan threw a flying knee that Derek was able to use to get a takedown, but then Jan hit him with a real nice elbow from the bottom, and it just completely opened him up, and blood just was pouring everywhere. And Derek, I don't know if it was, I think he said after the fight that one of the elbows actually knocked him out.
Wow.
And then he woke up and he was covered in blood, so he tapped.
Yeah.
So again, there's a little bit of a language barrier there, so I might be misquoting that a little bit.
Right.
But that's kind of what he said, was that one elbow knocked him out, and then he woke up and there's blood everywhere, and I think he kind of panicked. But even still, Jan and Bexod are both 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, something like that. I think Bexod's 7-0 now. I think Jan's 6-0 now. So sorry, I don't have my list in front of me. My brain's all over the place.
I believe you're correct. Yeah.
So anyway, so Derek's lost a couple with us, but he's fighting the toughest guys we've had, right? Jan just fought for the belt and won by DQ on our last event. So yeah, I think it's a good fight for both guys, and I think if Derek can't get Aaron to the ground, I think he's in for a tough night.
Right.
Because I don't think there are many guys that can kickbox with Aaron Trussell.
Yeah, it's amazing. His kickboxing
so fast.
Oh yeah, and he hits hard.
Yeah. I mean, he fights guys that, like there are guys that he fought that normally want to keep it standing the whole time and get annoyed when guys wrestle him, and those guys start wrestling Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah,
his stand-up's so good.
He's a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, we've seen him all over the New England scene, and especially at Combat FC shows. It's going to be one of those fights if like you just said, Rick, if Aaron Trussell could get his striking going, defend the takedowns, and stay on his feet, that's obviously where he wants the fight to be. And then Derek De Freitas, he's going to want to get the fight to the ground. So, like you said earlier, a traditional grappler and striker matchup here, and we're going to have to see who can execute their strength better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next fight of the night. This one is super cool. We were talking about it earlier. Obviously, David Giuliano and Josh Medeiros. Sorry, I got my list all messed up here. Let me go ahead and throw the poster up there. Josh Medeiros and David Giuliano. The Cobra makes his return to the Combat FC cage. Rick, this fight, both of these guys were on your last card, if I'm not mistaken, right?
They were. I got to say something real quick. Pull that photo back up.
Yep.
Pull that photo back up if you can. I met David Giuliano in person at the last fights, and I was like, as soon as he walked up to the table, I was like, he said he was fighting on the card, and I'm like, I'm struggling to place you, man. And it's crazy because I know everybody on the card. I matched the card, and then he told me his name, and he's like, I says, okay, I didn't recognize you based on your photo. And he's like, yeah, I'm much better looking in person, aren't I? That's a shit photo of David Giuliano. So if David's listening, I want him to send me another photo for the next poster. That photo barely looks like him.
Yeah.
But really funny guy. I thought he was a good guy to chat with. What little time I had to chat with him last time, he was a cool guy. He was fun to be around.
No, he was awesome. He came up from New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, and last fight was awesome. I got in touch with him after the fight, got to talk to him a little bit. Really cool guy. And this fight right here, we touched on it earlier when we were introducing the whole show, but like you said, right now, these are two guys who very similar kind of experiences inside the cage. Obviously, Giuliano is going to have the experience advantage, but both of these guys are at kind of similar points in their career. Two flyweights that should make for an amazing fight. What went into putting this one together, Rick?
Well, I mean, they both had good performances on the last fight and
Yeah,
the last event, and I think Medeiros fought a super tough guy in Adrian Haley, right? Like he's a guy whose record just doesn't match his skill set. I think we've talked about him in the past. You look at the guys that he lost to, and they're all like, you look at him now, they're all 8-0, 7-0, like so he's fighting absolute killers. And Josh was all over him, right? So
right,
Josh had him hurt, had him hurt in round one, was all over him early. But the experience of Adrian and just kind of walking through that fire in other fights and just finding ways to keep going and start to break guys down, he brought Josh. I mean, again, if it was a 1 round fight, Josh won that fight, right? But it
right,
wasn't, right? So Adrian kind of persevered, took him into deep waters, and ended up drowning him, right? So in the 3rd round, he ended up getting the knockout. So I would say that what went into this one was you can see the skills that Josh has,
right,
right? Phenomenal athlete, lots of power, great wrestling, great grappling. Just he's everything you want in a prospect,
right,
right? And Giuliano is a guy that's he came out and he looked great in his last fight too. I'd say he probably, like, again, guys always get mad if like, oh, you said I'm not a good athlete, right? I'm not saying he's not a good athlete. I'm
right,
saying, like, I think Medeiros is a phenomenal athlete, right? And I think that Giuliano is probably not quite as athletic as him, but I think his boxing is probably a little bit cleaner,
right.
so
Yeah,
it's one of those fights that and again, when I say Josh is a phenomenal athlete, I think he was a 4-time state champ in wrestling,
yeah.
right?
I
So
think so too. Yep.
yeah, and he's he was knocking guys out in kickboxing fights. I mean, you saw what his hands look like in the last fight. So he's
Yeah,
I mean, real good athlete, big power, super exciting, very explosive. And Giuliano's a guy a little bit more experienced than him.
yeah. I
But
think like couple fights, like three or probably no
yeah, I
five.
think he's
Like
got 3 or 4. Yeah,
yeah,
whatever it is. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think I want to say his record is it 3-4? Is that what he is?
Three
Is that
and
what he is
four.
now, or
Yep.
3-3?
Three
Yeah.
and four.
Again, he's fought a lot of tough guys.
He sure
So
has.
this is one of those things where the record doesn't match the skill set. And in his last fight, he came in and knocked out Dan Cormier,
Yeah.
and Dan's got 20, 21 pro fights, and that's not
Yeah.
even factoring in his boxing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so it's it was just one of those fights that it seemed to make a lot of sense. They both fought on the last card. They both looked good.
Yeah.
And I think when we actually did our post-fight podcast last time, somebody said something about, kind of what we would, what could be next for Medeiros or something along those
Yep.
lines. And I remember saying, I don't know, think David Giuliano would make sense for that. And then, oh, that was a good fight, right? And then, when we had all 4 of us on,
Yeah.
and someone, so it's
Yeah.
the
I
second
think.
the night of fights was over, it was like that one makes sense.
Yeah.
It just looked good.
Yeah, I remember that conversation definitely, and you're right. They both looked great back at Combat FC 6. They both drew in the crowd, so I know that's a plus for the promotion, and it made them look great out there too. And yeah, the knockout over Dan Cormier, like you said, that's impressive because going into that fight, David Giuliano was 2-4, and his opponent Dan Cormier had an extensive record. He had how many MMA fights? You said over 20, right?
I think it was 20. I think it
Yeah.
was 20 fights that he
I
had. Yeah.
yeah, I think he was at least like I think his record was somewhere around 500, and I want to say he had 10
Yeah,
fights
it
on
was
each
like 10
side.
and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So you got to be pretty good to beat 10 guys,
Exactly.
regardless, even if you're a 500 guy, like if you, it's, it's not like he's going out there just beating a bunch of turds. You know,
That's
he's
that's the crazy thing about MMA math is like, you had a guy, a lot of boxing fights, a lot of MMA fights. Then you have a guy 2-4, still inexperienced, still trying to find his way and really make a mark in his career, get rolling, goes out and knocks him out. You know what I mean? So and
yeah,
that's nuts. And that's the reason why the fight game is so exciting because you really don't know what to expect out of people. But
yeah.
this is an
Just one quick
exciting.
thing.
Go ahead.
I wanted to. So I this is another thing that I will look at. Right. So you can't always judge guys just based on their pro fights. So Giuliano, so he lost his first three fights, but that was all the way back in 2013, and then he didn't fight for a little while, and then he came back and 3 years later in 2016, and he won six amateur fights in a row before turning pro.
Yeah,
So
that's impressive.
and it
Yeah,
was and 5 out of 6 by finish. Right.
yeah,
So he finished 5 out of 6 guys, won six in a row over 2 years, and then turned pro. So, it's not like he's fighting guys that are, you know, it's not like he was out there fighting turds either,
right,
like
exactly.
I'm looking at some of the guys that he's got on his record. I mean, we don't need to beat it to death, but that was something that when I looked at him, even with the 2-4 record last time, it was like this fucking guy won six fights in a row in the amateurs before turning pro and fighting hammer after hammer. So,
Right.
he's another one that I knew he's a lot tougher than what his record was. So
Yeah. That's something you're really good at, and looking through the records and figuring out how good these guys really are. Because, like we keep saying, the records really don't tell you the whole story about the guys. But this fight right here, I know, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if so, but Everett Disselets and Anthony Pike, obviously no poster for this one. I think it just came together. It's a recent fight within the past like couple
yeah,
days, right?
it actually came together probably a little more than a week ago, but
Oh, okay.
um,
They both
but
had
yeah,
different
I did.
opponents, right?
They did,
Originally, they're
yeah,
both.
but yeah, I
Yep.
just realized when we were talking, I forgot to create a new poster for it and
Oh,
announce that the opponent changed. So I've got a lot of stuff going on lately, so I completely forgot about to announce that. But yeah, so initially, um, Anthony Pike was fighting Romano Medina, and
yep.
Romano's dealing with an ankle injury, so he had to pull out of that fight. And Everett, and I believe his last name is pronounced Desolé. I
Yeah,
had someone correct me that and say, tell me it
I
was
think so.
Desolé the other day. So he was supposed to fight Patrick Benson, and Patrick actually beat Romano, oddly enough, on our last event.
Yep.
And so he was super tough guy, right? He also picked up another win shortly after that. He took a short notice fight up a weight class
Yeah.
and won by submission. So Benson's looking great lately, and I guess he kicked somebody in training. I guess he kicked somebody's elbow, and it completely like it like his pinky toe was like standing straight up, like it was just
Ah,
gross. And
yeah.
but I guess he had his like his foot's fractured or broken in three places, so he's going to be out
Jeez.
for like he's not going to be able to train for like 6-8 weeks. So he's
Yeah.
out as well. So we had two guys that in the same weight class lose opponents, and fortunately, I think it's a really interesting matchup because the people in New England are probably more familiar with Everett. Like they've seen
Yep.
him fight a lot. He's had guy kind of just sprinted onto the scene recently. Like
Yeah.
out of nowhere, he just came on the scene and started fucking smashing everybody. And
Literally.
and he's just one of those guys. Like he reminds me of like 155-pound Yoel Romero.
Yep.
Like he's a better grappler than most of the guys he fights, but he just stands up and punches everybody in the face,
Yeah.
and just brawls with
Yeah.
people.
He
So I mean,
has he has a
he's
lot
like
of
Yoel Romero when Yoel was exciting, like
yeah.
before he started like fighting, doing the weird cautious thing he's doing. Um,
Yeah.
like he was exactly like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
So
I was just gonna say that Disselay, he's fought. You said up a weight class, but he's been in there with some absolute dogs. Like what he's done in his short span of time is amazing. And what I was getting at, especially, is he has knocked out, I want to say, Let me see. I thought I wrote it down. Yeah, so he has 3 finishes within 2 rounds. So he's finished almost every single one of his opponents in the first round. I think one of them got into the second round. But he has like amazing world class recognition in his ground game. And
Yeah, it's
what
judo. Yeah,
his judo, right? That's what I thought it was judo. Yeah.
yeah,
So his judo is
phenomenal
world
judo player.
class.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you hardly ever see him have to really go back and use his judo. A lot of it is just straight punches and just mauling guys on the feet. But I would love to see him,
yeah. He
display
also
it.
wrestled in college too.
Yeah,
Yeah, he wrestled
yeah.
in college. I forget where he wrestled, but yeah,
You
he
hard
wrestled. I think
you
he wrestled
hardly
Division One
see.
in college.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where he wrestled that. I know he was, very high up in worlds and stuff like that with judo, like all big
Yeah,
tournaments and stuff like that. I'm not very
yeah,
familiar with the big judo tournaments and stuff like that, but world class guy. And my point is we hardly ever see him have to resort back to his judo. A lot of times, like I said, it's just amazing, stand up game and getting guys out of there quick without much, just a couple
yeah.
punches. And it's going to be exciting to see him make his Combat FC debut. That's a fun fight to have up there, Rick.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this one, and yeah, he was fighting up a weight class. I mean, he's a guy that after the last Combat FC, he was at the last Combat FC. I mean, a lot of people would probably recognize him because he has his dog with him, right? So,
Hmm.
um, he was at the last Combat FC. He sent me a quick shot of him stepping on the scale the day after the fight, and it was like he was like 175 pounds. So this is a guy that's walking around at like 75, 76, and he was fighting up at 170. And when some of the guys he's fighting are fucking huge. So
Yeah.
it was time for him to, and he's so talented though. Like he could be one of the best fighters in the area at 170 if he continued to do that. But he's a guy that's kind of got his sights set on not just getting to the UFC but contending there. So it makes sense. You got to fight in the weight class you intend to fight in the UFC at. Like you can't keep
Right.
taking fights with 200 pounders, right? So, um, and yeah, he's running into Anthony Pike, who just beat Jay Bakanowski on the last show, and so Pike really liked this fight. When I sent it off to him, he accepted really quick, and
Yeah.
and he says yes to everybody. Like he's just one of those guys. He's a badass. He'll fight anyone. But I said, hey, do you have a chance to watch any film on him? Because like I'm not trying to
He's
like
good.
shake your confidence or anything, but the guy you're fighting has like when he's beating guys, like he's beating the shit out of guys.
Right.
Like he's not just like it's not one of those things where like yeah he's taking guys down and just kind of choking them a little bit like he's beating the shit out of guys and then choking them.
Right.
So and he's like, oh yeah, I watched film on him, and he kind of rattled off a few things. I don't want to kind of spoil his game plan, but um, Pike was like he also wrestled. I mean, he was a Division I All American.
Yeah. Yep.
From Arizona State. So like I think he sees some of these guys like he doesn't give a fuck if you're a world class judo guy. He's like, try to fucking grapple me, right? Like
Yeah.
he feels like he can grapple with anybody.
Yep.
So obviously, very different styles, but these are two phenomenal athletes. Like these aren't guys that are just like, yeah, they're pretty athletic. Like
Right.
you know, both wrestled Division I in college. Pike was an All American. Everett's got the judo background.
Yeah.
Both of these guys can crack. I mean, this is a super fun fight. Like
Absolutely.
I'm so glad we got this fight. I
I
mean,
hope it's Go
very
ahead.
rarely do you have fights fall apart when you're just like, okay, yeah, we'll just match up the opponents and hope for the best. Like, very
Yeah.
rarely do you have that happen and have it be something where you've got
Amazing fight right here.
two
Yeah.
elite grapplers who prefer to stand and throw.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's
It's
there's no telling what's gonna happen in this one.
I mean, be a lot of punches. That's what's gonna
Absolutely.
happen. These guys are gonna these guys are gonna go out there and try to knock each other's heads off. So I mean,
It
it's awesome. I'm super excited about this fight.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be awesome. I think we're going to see, like you said, both of them trying to, get a win on the feet. But I wouldn't be surprised if something goes wrong and one of them
Yeah,
shoots. We're gonna be in for
yeah.
some
I'm
fun.
sure there'll be some grappling too.
Yeah,
I'm sure there will be.
there's got to be. Yeah,
Yeah, there's got to be, and it'll be fun to watch those exchanges.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys exchange on the feet, but also on the mats. Next fight on the card would be, let me get the poster here. This one we have, Rick, Travis Demko versus Josh Rosen. This fight right here is one that everybody should be excited for. Obviously, has 4 first round finishes to his name, and Rosen comes off his first loss since 2019. Obviously, he's going to be very eager and very hungry to get back in the win column. He was riding, I think, like a 4-fight win streak. Just suffered not too recently. I think it was either earlier this year or late last year, his first defeat. After that win streak, and obviously he's going to be very hungry to get back in the win column, get to 5-2, and then you got Demko, 4 first round finishes, like I said, and super exciting fighter in himself. This fight right here, I think you got 2 hungry guys, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Uh, I'm not gonna be counting on any decisions here. I definitely see a finish happening in this fight. Like I said, I expect Josh to be very hungry. He wants to get back into the winning column, and then you got Demko, who, like I said, is just a killer, man. His finishes and are just amazing.
Yeah, he can crack, man. So his boxing is really good, and in some of his earlier MMA fights, he didn't really show it. I think he's 8-1 as a pro boxer. So
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
so.
yeah, Demko's boxing is really, really good, and um, it was good to see him come out in the last fight and kind of rely on his boxing because um, I think so he had a loss about a year or so ago, like that
Hmm.
one loss that he has, and he basically grappled a grappler the whole fight. Um, and
Yeah.
Sean Johnson, like when I say Sean's a grappler, like Sean's a really good judo guy also. He's got
Hmm.
stand up too, so it's not like he's primarily like only a grappler, but um, like Travis's boxing is definitely better than Sean's, but he did none of it in the fight, right? So it seemed like it was the case of, okay, we know your boxing is really good. We got to work on your grappling. So I think in training he was probably working a shitload of grappling, and then as the fight kicks off, he's been doing so much grappling that that's kind of what he went in and relied on. And it's like, no, I mean your boxing is. I mean, I'm trying to think of who else out here at 145 would have better boxing than Demko,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't know that there is anyone out here that, if we're talking just hands, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like go out there and lead with that, man. Like that should
Yeah.
be your thing. Like you should be using the grappling to keep guys boxing with you. So he's obviously sounds much easier to just say it than do it, right?
Right.
But yeah, he's so much fun. All his fights are fun. I mean, he's like all action all the time. He's pushing the
Yeah.
pace. He's a fun personality too. Like
Yeah.
his post fight interview with the cigar was hysterical, and I got lunch with him probably, I don't know, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, and he's just a cool guy. Like he's another one that I really really like, and um, I'd say in this fight, both guys are well rounded. So I don't want to call it a classic striker versus grappler because I think they both have really good MMA games, but I would say Rosen appears to be um, more of a grappler than he is a striker, whereas Demko is obviously more of a striker than a grappler. But they're both good enough in those other areas of the game that I think the fight will be competitive everywhere. I don't think it's going to be a dominant wrestling performance from
Yeah.
Rosen or a completely dominant stand up. Like I think both of these guys are going to be competitive everywhere. And
Yeah. Have their moment.
anytime you've got anytime you've got a 4-1 guy and a 4-2 guy that have fought good guys, that's what I was doing with my phone a minute ago. I was trying to get some records here. I mean, there's like Rosen's not fighting turds, man.
Right.
When he was 3-1, he beat a guy that was 3-1. He went out there and submitted him, and before that he fought a 4-3 guy. So it's like he's fighting decent guys, man. So it should
Absolutely.
be a really fun fight. This
Yeah.
is
And
one that I believe we're kicking Fight Pass off with that one. So
there you go.
yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, it's
So
a really good fight.
One last question about this fight. Demko, he got his last victory over Daniel Gary. That was a quick fight, if I'm not mistaken, right? It was really quick, like first round, first minute, if I'm
It
not mistaken.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think yeah, it was I wanna say it was like 30, 35 seconds, something like
yeah,
that. Yeah, it was one of those punches where, he hit him really, really clean with a right hand, and it kinda caught him, like,
yeah,
right on the ear. So, it yeah, like, Daniel did kinda this, like, weird I don't know, it was almost like he was swimming, right? Like, except
yeah,
he just fell flat on his face, like,
yeah.
lost
I
control of
remember.
his legs and his arms at the same time and was
Yeah,
just like he just got cracked and his body shut down.
yeah,
Like you could see that he was still there, like in his mind he was still there, but his limbs just weren't working anymore.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
Travis followed up with a couple more shots and got the stoppage. And Daniel tried to stand up immediately, but then
yeah,
was kind of stumbling around, and it was yeah, he's again, it's Travis has got that kind of one punch knockout power, and we saw it in that one. I mean, it was he hit him clean with one, hit him with another one as he was falling, and then a couple quick punches,
that
and
was it.
they actually I felt bad on the last one. So Travis went last on the last show, right? He was the last fight of the night, and we had some post limbs, and we based on the
Mhm.
fight pass schedule, we had to start early, so it was like some other fights went long. So I mean, it was like midnight, and the main
Yeah,
card ended 2 hours earlier, and
this was the
you
very
know
last fight of the night.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
people at the Shriners had unplugged the smoke machines and shit, so like the venue was starting to look bright, and it was
yeah,
we're 20% full at that point. A
yeah,
lot of people had gone home, but it was just like I was glad for the people that stayed. I was glad they got to see a good knockout at the end of the night. And
for sure. It
I
was.
told Travis after that when I was like, hey, I know it sucks being a post limit going last, and I had 10 different guys complaining about the fight order last time and wanting to get their fight moved, and why
Yeah,
can't I be fight pass? Why can't I be on the Facebook thing? Like, why do I? Like he was one of the only guys that didn't complain, and
yeah,
he had he had probably the shittiest spot last time
yeah.
based on just how the timing went. 'Cause, I mean, the night went
It was.
real long last
Yeah,
time.
late night. Yeah. But good
Yeah,
for him. That
so
was a
yeah,
good way to end the night for sure. I remember everybody
it
talking
was.
about it. Yeah. People
Yeah,
were happy. So, let's move on here. This is an exciting fight too. New England's own, or rather should I say the New England Cartel's own Nick Fior will be taking on Brazil's Gustavo Franca. I think Coelho might be his nickname. I'm not sure, but Franco Coelho, Brazilian, coming from Brazil. Obviously, this fight right here, you have two Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. This is an exciting one on the mats, and if I had to guess, I'm assuming we're going to see some striking and some jiu-jitsu brought into this one.
mhm,
It seems to be how both guys like to fight, but Fior comes into this fight at 7-2, and like I said a minute ago, he's a part of Tyson Chartier's New England cartel with some of the amazing guys up there: Calvin Cater, Rob Font, Tom Pagliarulo. Man, the list goes
yep.
on. There's a whole bunch of them. But
Carlos
then
Lazoya, don't forget
yeah, oh
Carlos.
yeah, Lazoya, teammate Lazoya on the card, who we're going to
Yeah,
be talking about in just a few minutes for sure. But Nick Fior will be taking on Gustavo Franca, coming from Brazil. And I'm curious to know, how did you guys get in touch with him out in Brazil? What was, was he looking to get on a fight card, or maybe you guys just saw him out there fighting and wanted to bring him on? But man, this fight right here is super exciting. Two guys, lots of experience between the two. Obviously, Fior has a couple UFC fights under his belt, etc. Gustavo has over 20 pro fights himself. So this one right here, this is
yeah,
a very very professional fight.
yeah. It'd be a lot of fun. So how it came together? I've been looking for someone for Nick for probably a little over a week now, maybe a
Yeah,
week and a half. Was struggling to find him an opponent, and I had reached out to Marcelo Cicada, who runs BMAC in Boston, because um, there was someone from his gym that had expressed interest in fighting a little while ago, but we weren't able to get him on. And he has a lot of guys, so they're a shootbox affiliate, right? So they're one of the like if you're training at if your main gym is shootbox in Brazil, and you
right.
come to the United States, you might end up if you're in the Boston area, you're for sure training at BMAC, and they have a lot of really good guys from Brazil pop in and out. So I'm trying to remember the kid's name that he went to the UFC recently. I want to say he fights at 130. Wait a minute, what was it? 130? No, I'm sorry, 155. He fights at 155,
From New
and
England?
no, he's a Brazilian guy
Oh,
from Shooter Box, right? So he's
okay.
got I forget what it's called, but the skin disorder where like some of your
Oh,
skin
yeah,
is
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
white,
Yep.
like
Yeah, I
really
know.
like pale white. Yeah,
Yeah,
what's that guy's name? I
I
mean, you
know
know the
who
guy
you're
I'm talking
talking
about.
about.
He
Yeah,
fought in the
yep,
UFC. He's looked really good. Like
yep.
he was another one that they tried to get on my show. Like I feel like an asshole that I don't remember the guy's name, but um, it's like, hey, he's in town for a month. Can you get him on your card? And the kid was like something like 15-2, and I'm like, probably not. Like, who the fuck's gonna fight that guy?
Right.
And
It
so
was,
I tried to get him on.
he just got booked. It was, uh, what's his last name? It'll come to me for sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, super tough guy. Like, very exciting. Like,
Yep.
great stand up. So yeah, he had some crazy record, and like nobody around here would fight him. I offered title fights to a couple guys around here at 55, and they were just like, no, I'm not fighting that fucking guy. And
Right.
like, what are you talking about? And so, Marcelo always has guys kind of popping in and out. And so Gustavo, I don't know if he's living here now or if he's just here temporarily, but I know he was teaching us. He had a few seminars that he was doing up in the area,
Okay.
and Marcelo said that, hey, I've got this guy that wants to fight, and he sent me his info, and he's like, yeah, we like he'd take the Fiore fight, and I was like, okay, let's see, right? And
Yeah.
I reached out to Tyson, and yeah, they accepted, relatively quickly, and I think this one's going to be pretty interesting because um you've got kind of that like new school MMA blended jujitsu, for lack
Yep.
of a better term. Like, so Fiore is, he's truly a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. So it's not like he's like MMA first, but
Right.
he's definitely like he's got a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game. He's a legit black belt, but he's transitioned that into MMA really well. Whereas I think Gustavo is more of that traditional. I mean, he's a fourth degree jiu-jitsu black belt. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen if you kind of transition. Like, so he's primarily a grappler who also fights, whereas
Right.
I would say Fiore is primarily a fighter who has a phenomenal grappling background. So I mean, that'll be one thing that's really interesting, because if this was a traditional gi jiu-jitsu tournament, I mean, you got to say that Gustavo's probably got the advantage there.
Right.
But it's an MMA fight, so it's we're gonna see, how kind of how it all plays together, right? We're gonna see how it all goes. And lately, Fiore certainly had the tougher fights, and he's had more experience lately, so it'll be a good one. Anytime we
Absolutely.
can we can get a couple of jiu-jitsu black belts in there, and yeah,
Experienced. Yeah.
yeah, adding a UFC vet in the
Yeah.
last couple weeks before the show. I mean, this fight came together like earlier this week. I want to say they accepted that fight Monday or Tuesday of this week. So it's anytime you can add a UFC vet fighting a fourth degree jiu-jitsu black belt,
Right.
in the last 2 weeks, it's like, how do you not?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's an
the card
amazing
looks great,
addition.
but how do I say no to that? Like, yeah, let's
Right.
do it.
Right. Exactly. I think
Yeah, we'll make
that's a
we'll make room.
great addition to the card. Two experienced guys. That fight's gonna be in the welterweight division, and two guys, like we just said, amazing jujitsu artists. And like you said, Rick, Fior knowing how to mix his jujitsu into his MMA game. I've seen him. He's done amazing. His two losses are only in the UFC, and he fought Rebecca and the second
Hooper.
fight. Yeah, yeah, two killers in the
Yeah.
UFC.
Yeah, Hooper's looks all right lately. Yeah.
Chase Hooper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he looked phenomenal last weekend.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Fior, obviously his two imperfections coming only from the UFC roster, that has to show a lot. And obviously he gets a win here over Gustavo. That's a good win to add to his resume for sure. For
Yeah.
actually, honestly, for both of these guys, for this fight to come together on 2 weeks is impressive, because this is a fight that can really help both of them. Obviously, I don't know if Gustavo's looking to make any big runs. Fiora, though, for sure is, and adding Franca to the resume, that's definitely a good win. Next fight I wanted to mention for the Combat FC 7 card with you, Rick, is the Jake Pilla versus Adrian Haley fight. This fight contested in the bantamweight division. Pilla coming into the fight at 4-1 as a professional, and Haley coming in at 3-3. This fight right here, I can't wait. I'm hoping this one's gonna be on Fight Pass. I'm assuming it might be. Yeah, looks like it will be.
It will be,
Pilla,
absolutely.
yeah, Pilla coming off his first ever loss to John Duma, who's taking on Ashika Jim in the title fight. So Pilla's very tough guy. To only be defeated by John Duma is pretty impressive. 4-1 and 4 wins by first round submission for himself. So his submission game is we know it's top notch for sure. And Haley was on the last show, put forth a great performance, a really tough guy as well. He comes off a, what was it, third round knockout victory, right? And yeah, two exciting guys. Both of them. No, Pillow wasn't on the last card, whereas Haley was. But two Combat FC veterans couldn't have made a better matchup. I think this one right here
Yeah.
is
Yeah. This
they
one's going to be
both got a
cool.
lot of momentum.
This one's going to be cool. And the thing that I find interesting about this one, right? So, um, Jake's had 4 fights with us, and he starts really fast.
Yeah,
He had three guys that he got out of there in about 30 seconds apiece. Some of them were even faster, right? So he gets out there, he starts fast, and even in that title fight, he was all over Duma.
yeah,
Early on, like it looked like it was, the fight. I mean, again, I don't want to say it could have got stopped. It wasn't at the point where it could have got stopped. If it got stopped, it would have been way early, right? So
right,
but he landed some big shots and had Duma hurt. And there was a moment in that stand up where it was like, holy shit, he might get him out of here, right? And then he got it, he ended up taking him down and was working from the top. And I mean, that first 2 minutes of that fight, he was all over him. And then
right.
Duma did what Duma does, right? Like he weathered the storm and was able
Took
to
him to
come
deep
back and
waters.
get that win. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was, but anyway, where I was going with it is Pilla's a super fast starter.
yep,
And he's really good at getting guys out of there early. Adrian Haley's not a guy that you can go out there and get out of there early.
yeah,
So I'll be interested to see how that goes, right? Because, again, the first minute or two of every Jake Pilla fight, he's going to be trying to get guys out. Like he starts super fast and he's going to be trying to get them out of there early. If he does it, it's amazing. If he doesn't, like Adrian's a guy that typically is good at weathering the storm and kind of using his experience to kind of take the fights into later rounds and get wins later. And Jake's been working his ass off though. He's been out I don't think Jake has a cardio problem. I don't mean it to come across like that. Like he's not a
right,
guy that's gonna, like, it's not like he starts fast and then if he doesn't get you out of there, he's fucked. Like he typically gets guys out of there. Like that's the thing. He typically gets them all out of there. But he's been training
exactly.
out at the UFC PI. He's spent some time out at Syndicate recently, and
Yeah, with Marat.
yeah, he's always been dedicated, but it seems like he's even more dedicated now than he was before.
Yeah,
Like he's really gone all in, and it should be a phenomenal fight.
yeah. That I
Both of these guys, super exciting styles too. It's neither guy's ever been in a boring fight.
I've been watching a lot of the videos of Pilla out there at Syndicate in Vegas. I know Marat seems to have been the reason why he's out there. Like they're spending time together, training together out there, and man, that's super cool to see two New England guys out there. And this fight right here, you got two guys with great momentum behind them. Both of them with great finishes to their records. And this bantamweight fight, you couldn't go wrong with this one being on the main card. But now, what everybody's waiting for, some of the most exciting fights on the card, and the biggest stakes for sure. We have our first title fight that I wanted to discuss with you tonight, Rick, and that would be the vacant featherweight championship fight. That's Jerry Muse, or no, not vacant. That's Damian Nelson defending, right? Yeah.
No, it's vacant. You had it right.
Oh no, yeah, because the Sheamus fight was not for the title.
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah. Sorry. So that when we saw Nelson and Grebe fight, that had me messed up. I thought it was a title fight, but no. Now remembering back, it's not. So vacant featherweight championship. Jerry Muse 6-0 versus Damian Nelson 5-4. This fight right here, obviously, like I just said, the reason why I got mixed up a minute ago, Damian Nelson comes off an amazing knockout victory back at Combat FC 6. He defeated Don Sheamus. Sheamus was originally set to take on Nate Grebe for the title until that fight fell out for the reason that you mentioned earlier, Rick, where Grebe thought that he would be advancing to the next level. But man, Nelson and Sheamus, what a fight. We'll talk about that for a quick minute. That was a banger inside the auditorium there in Wilmington. And obviously,
yeah,
Nelson got it done by big way, knockout. His striking, his boxing looked great, like it always does. Every time I see him fight, his stand-up
yeah.
game is
He
always
looked
really solid.
incredible in that.
He
Like
sure
he
did.
looked better than ever in that fight.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked so damn good in that last fight. I mean,
His
everybody knows that Damien's good, but I mean, that was one of those performances where, like, if you have one performance like that in your entire career, where everything comes together, right? And
yeah,
like that's just one of those things that 20 years from now he can show that video. Like he's got a video that he
yeah,
can show to his I'm saying 20
yeah,
years from now, probably won't be grandkids 20 years from now, but you get the idea. He can, when he's later on in life and it's like, hey, I used to fight, check this out. Like
right.
he's got one of those fights that he can
Highlight
show
reels.
people, and it's like,
Yeah.
like the whole fight was just he looked so good.
I
And
had a great time watching that one. I mean,
yeah,
we were expecting, I would say, a totally different fight, and Nelson came out there, and I love watching the guy fight. I watched him fight at PFL, then I watched him, fight at your show. I actually watched him fight here in New England before the PFL fight, and dude, what a fight! What a performance! And this fight should be super exciting too. I can't say that Muse will stand there and bang with him, but obviously it's going to be Nelson's game plan to stay in there, stay away from the strong, slick submission game of Jerry Muse, who's 6-0 with, I think he's got one knockout victory too.
I
I
think he's
want
got a
to say,
TKO in there. Yeah,
yeah, TKO,
yes,
5 submissions,
yeah,
impressive ground game, like as good as it gets in my opinion. Obviously 5 quick submissions too, like Imanari rolls and weird, different
yeah.
unique
He's
stuff
Twister
like
two guys. Yeah,
twisters, yeah,
but
like different.
is there? I mean, have you ever seen a 6-0 guy who gets less respect though?
I know,
Like,
and I personally like the respect that Combat FC has and the fact that he's delivering for the fans. He's a veteran. For
yeah,
him to be on
yeah.
this
Well, that's the thing. I
Memorial
don't
Day card.
necessarily mean from the. Yeah, I don't mean like I don't necessarily mean like from the promotions. I mean, I've talked to some other fighters, and they're like the amount of disrespect that I hear, like the amount of people who are just like like they feel like Jerry's in over his head. Like even in some of his
Yeah,
other fights, they're like, oh, this is a guy. Like they just like I've never seen so many people hate on a 6-0 guy, and maybe it is the dancing and the other extracurricular shit that's kind of making him be a little more hateable for some people.
flamboyant. Yeah,
But yeah, but I mean, he's 6-0. He's looked great. He's been in some fights where he's taken some damage, and like it's weird though with him. They'll see it and they'll say, oh well, he was taking damage in a fight against a guy that's 500. So I mean, how good is he really? And it's like, well, like so it's a bad thing now. Like so
right.
it's a bad thing that he's kind of gone to war a little bit and then broke guys down and gotten submissions. Like to me, that should be a positive.
Yeah,
Like if he's the fact that he's gone out there and the guys that he's fighting again, they're not bums. Like he's fighting guys that are good, solid local guys, right? So he's fighting guys that have looked really good on other shows. He's stood there and traded with him a little bit. He's gotten some takedowns, and then he submitted him and got him out of there.
yeah,
Like that's. I mean, not every performance. Like I'd feel I'd be more nervous, like on for him if he's just been submitting guys and he hasn't actually gone out there and gotten punched in the head at all. Like if he
Right.
was just getting takedowns and submitting guys, super easy. But like we've seen him in fights where he's kind of had to walk through the fire a little bit, and
Yeah, to get the submission.
it's
Yep.
right. So he's and as silly as the personality is, like he's absolutely playing a character, and he's playing mind games with people. And I'll give you a quick example on this one. Like
Sure.
he sat with me cage side on the last event, and you'll see some of that on the Combat FC Rewind show that we're putting out. Or actually, we've got a show that's going to be on Nessun as well as Swerve
Oh,
TV coming up.
that's
I think
awesome.
Fight Pass as well this week. So it's kind of like a lead-in show, similar to what we did last time. I don't know if you saw
Mhm.
the Jan Oliveira and Ali
Yeah.
Zepman.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've got an hour-long version this time that kind of highlights four guys leading into the fights this weekend. And you'll see at Jerry was sitting with me cage side for the Damian Nelson and Don Shainis fight. He was, and it was like, do you remember when Tony Romo first started doing Monday Night Football, first started commentating football, and they were like, this fucking guy knows all the plays. Oh
Yeah.
my God. It's like that's what it was like sitting with Jerry. Like
Yeah, I
he
think I
was,
remember you telling me this story. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, like everything about it. Like it was, and it was like little tiny nuances. It was shit like the way that Don likes to shoot his takedowns. I don't think it's going to work well against Damian because the way that Damian counterpunches is like this. So you'll see, and then like as he's explaining it to me, we see Don shoot a takedown and walk right into the punch that Jerry was telling me was going to be right there. And so he's a really, really sharp guy when it comes to like analyzing fights and picking up on little nuances. And as we were watching the fight, he told me, like, initially he was, I think like a lot of people, he thought Shainis was going to win that fight. So he said, look, I'll step aside because he was supposed to fight Damian on the last one. He said, I'll step aside so that Damian can fight Shainis on this one. But I want to fight Shainis for the belt in May. I want to fight him for the belt on Memorial Day weekend. And that was what he wanted. And then as Shainis was losing the fight, he said, all right, I want Damian for the belt Memorial Day weekend. Right.
Right.
Like cage side. This is what he's telling me. Right. And
Yeah.
and then he went, and then as Damian got out of the cage, you'll actually see on the show, there's a moment where he shakes Damian's hand and you can see him kind of joking with him a little bit. And I was talking to Damian later and I said, so what do you think about rebooking that Muse fight? And he's like, oh yeah, he doesn't want to fight me anymore. And I said, what do you
Uh,
mean? And he's like, oh yeah, he came up to me after the fight and was like, oh, thank God I stepped aside and let you fight Shainis. You would have beat my ass tonight. Amazing. You
yeah,
look so
yeah.
good. And I was like, oh, it's funny that he did that because he told me like he told me that like he asked for the fight. He said he wants it. And
Right.
he was like, get out of here. Like
Mhm.
he's like, you're joking. And I'm like, no, I'm being completely serious. Like
Right.
he asked for the fight. He wants to fight you for the belt in May. And Damien was like looking around like you're like this is the strangest thing. Like this is the strangest thing
Yeah.
that's ever happened. Like he tells you he wants it. He told me he doesn't want to, told me
Yeah,
that
exactly.
and so like he fucks with people. He's playing mind games, right?
Yeah,
So
and he's looking him dead in the eyes doing it.
right, right, exactly. Like shaking his hands and telling him,
Yeah,
"Oh God, thank God I
yeah.
wasn't in there with you." And but yeah, and again, he's a very cerebral guy. I've said this in some other interviews that I've done leading into this. I don't know what it is that Jerry's game plan is, but I guarantee you that right now he's seen some things on film where he's like, it'll be some like he knows that Damien's tough to take down, but he knows right now what kind of how he's intending to get whatever that takedown is.
Right.
Like, and he's got a backup plan for that. And he's got a backup plan for the backup plan. So, like, and it'll be something very specific. It'll be something to do with his footwork and the way that he likes to throw this combination, and he leaves his foot hanging out on this one so I can hit a low single here. Like it'll be something very specific where he'll
Yeah.
be looking for this exact combination, knowing that the way he throws these three punches, I got to move this way after I slip the last one because his foot will be right there. So he's, very, very
Very
cerebral guy. I mean,
yeah.
with the Imanari role, I mean, he was showing us pre-fight, he was showing us on weigh-in day.
How he
He's
was
like,
gonna
yeah,
do
this
it.
is
Yeah.
how this is how I'm gonna hit the Eminari roll. This is how he likes to start his fights. This is the way he circles. I'm gonna lead him this way, and then as he moves that way, I'm gonna hit the Eminari roll.
Yeah, that's impressive, man. That's what makes fighters different, you know?
Yeah, he's very, very sharp guy. So I mean, again, this is one though that will it, I mean, I can say this fight probably won't be a war. Like this
Right.
isn't going to be a 5 round war where we're confused, we're not sure who wins as it's going to the cards. If Jerry's able to turn this into a fight that happens mostly on the ground, then he's got a huge advantage there. I don't think he can box with Damian though. So this
Fair
is
enough.
one of those
Yeah.
fights that if Damian avoids the takedown, it's probably going to look a lot like a Shayna's fight. And if
Yeah.
he is able to, I mean, but that's the thing with Jerry, his submissions are so good, right? Like I think that's the difference between Sheamus is a good ground and pound guy. He's probably better positionally than Jerry,
Right.
but Jerry gets the submissions out of nowhere. So I think it'll be a super interesting fight. Super
Absolutely.
interesting
Yeah.
fight. I can't wait to see it.
I see Captain Rogers in the chat on Instagram right now. He just said pace, capital PACE, pace. I think, obviously he's
He's
thinking
probably
very
playing. He's probably playing fucking mind games, and that's not his strategy at all. We're on to you, Jerry. We're fucking on to you.
he,
So
he
I don't know
said
what it is.
he says don't be giving any secrets away, but he said then he says now he says primary. But yeah, I mean this fight right here, you said it best, Rick. I mean, two very exciting fighters, and the storyline to this one is truly awesome, right? The vacant featherweight championship, and honestly, we can't. There's no way to tell you how this one's gonna go, what's gonna play out. You might see Jerry Muse go for a submission in the first couple seconds that he's landed before, so I wouldn't, he could do it again, and you could also see it.
Yeah,
You could see this fight go into couple rounds worth of MMA too.
yeah. For all we know, he's been practicing a spinning wheel kick for the last 14 weeks.
Something, yeah.
Right? Like it's again, I don't know what it is. That's the thing with Jerry. He's a fucking wild man, and he goes out there and has a lot of fun. And that's one thing I like about his fights too. Is like he's doing this because he loves it.
Yeah.
He's going out there. He's trying to have fun. Like so many guys put so much pressure on themselves, where it's like, okay, I gotta take this fight because I'm trying to get to the UFC and I gotta get on Contender Series this year, and like they're so
Right.
worried about their career. Like Jerry's one of the few guys who's just like, like I'm trying to have fun. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
this for fun. Like I love it. So I mean, I've always liked his approach to it. So yeah, it'll be a fun night of fights, and I mean, it's gonna be a phenomenal fight. I can't wait.
Jerry Muse is a guy who really entertains the crowd as well. Obviously, if you don't know what that's all about, I recommend you checking out Combat FC 7 on May 24th, because a title fight, I can promise you, Jerry Muse has got something special in store for that. But let's get into the co-main event of the evening, May 24th. This fight right here, another title fight. This one's in the flyweight division, and I know this is a fight that you have wanted to make for a while. You wanted the promotion, you, Rick, as the matchmaker, you guys really backed Carlos Lazoya for the past couple fights, helped him grow into a guy who is now in a title fight and will be standing across from Ferdavs Kasanov on May 24th, a week from tonight, probably around this time of day too, quite honestly.
Yeah.
This fight right here, you have Ferdavs coming in at 9-4, Lazoya at 8-4. So only one fight differentiates these two in terms of how many fights they have under their belt. Flyweight title fight. Rick, tell me all about it, man.
Yeah. So one thing I want to mention right off the jump is that Ferdavs hasn't lost at 125. Right.
Yep.
So it's a tough weight class. It's a tough weight class to get fights in. So a lot of these guys will bounce up to 135. Even on the last show, Lazoya was on our show at 135. You'll see that happen a lot. So Ferdavs hasn't lost at 125. Super confident guy. And, he's from a part of the world where a lot of these guys are phenomenal grapplers.
Right.
He's from Uzbekistan, and a lot of these guys from Uzbekistan are, they're like the guy we mentioned earlier, Beksad, who goes out there and just overwhelms people with wrestling and grappling. And he's definitely more of a striker though. Like he throws big power shots.
Yeah.
So he's I heard in the again that show that we put together that's going to be on Nesson soon. I heard Lazoya mention, he throws a lot of looping shots, like big power shots, right? So, you know, we'll see. He's going out there, he's looking to try to get you out of there
Yeah.
with a couple shots, right? It's not like he's trying to kind of, just kind of tap you to death and point fight you to death, right?
Yeah.
He's coming out there to take your head off. And in Lazoya, I mean, that fight that he had with Dissanel, like Dissanel's not a guy that's easy to beat, and even if you beat him by decision. He's not a guy that gets run over. And
Right.
Lazoya fucking ran him over.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
I mean, it was just in the take. There were some really good grappling exchanges early in that fight. A lot of good reversals. They were like Lazoya was all over him though. I mean, he's like I forget who it was that described him this way, but they said he's like a honey badger. He just goes out there and the pace that he puts on guys is just through the roof, and he just and his jiu-jitsu game's probably a little different than what guys are used to out here, and he's just a lot of fun. He's super competitive, great athlete, and I would say, again, these ones, I don't want to describe this necessarily as striker versus grappler, because similar to the fight I mentioned earlier, both of these guys can fight everywhere.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be something where like one guy. I mean, Lazoya definitely has advantages on the ground. I think Ferdovs definitely has advantages in the stand up, but Lazoya thinks that he can outstrike him too.
Yeah.
And he looks at it like he's going to throw more straight punches, and he's going to beat him to the target, and it's gonna be an awesome fight, man. It's going to be a really cool fight.
Oh,
It's anytime we've got guys with this much experience and fighting the level of competition they have, it's going to be great. And Lazoya is a guy that he took a tough loss down at Fury. It was a split decision that a lot of people thought he won, and I mean, he was right there. That's a fight that he was 7-2 at the time, and it looked like it was hey, he goes out there and gets this win, he's potentially getting on Contender Series. So
right.
He's a guy that a year or so ago he was close, and
Yeah.
he's looking to string together a couple wins and get right back in that conversation. And this is that next step, right? A win here puts him right there.
Oh, yeah.
So
Ferdovs Kastinov is, a really high ranked opponent too. Like you said, a great guy to put in front of Carlos Lazoya. Both of them trying to make, the next step and get up to the next level of MMA. And Ferdovs, he'll be coming from Jersey, right? Where he's training out there. I think
he's from Philly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's
Philly,
down in,
Philly.
yeah, he's down in Philly, but
he trains with Marquez. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a guy that's from Dominance as well. So he's, they don't manage shitty fighters, man.
I know.
And
did you work with Ali to book this or no?
No. I work with a guy named Christian who also manages Nate Garib. So
yep.
Ferdovs is actually managed by another guy over at Dominance, but they all kind of help each other out.
Yeah.
They help the other guys get fights. So, but again, they don't work with bad fighters.
Exactly.
Like anybody that they have on the roster is a killer. So it's it's going to be a great fight. It's going to be
no doubt about it.
It could literally go either way.
Literally,
if there's I would say of most of the fights, like if I'm looking up and down the card, this one would probably have one of the closest betting lines of any of the fights on the show.
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. I would agree. I would totally agree with you there. 100%. This fight, I mean, a lot of them, quite honestly, Rick, would be very even to the bookies if there were lines. But we got one more fight before we hopefully I think we'll make it in time to watch Nate Grieb fight. I know the
So you probably
fight.
saw me playing with my phone. I was getting my fight pass logged in. I've got
Yeah,
LFA going over in the
I got
corner here.
I
So
got it in another window. So yeah, it looks like with one fight being left and the fight before Nate starting now, we might be able to get out of here and
oh
watch
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But let's see. Let's talk about this main event, man. This main event is a fight that people should really be excited for. John Duma versus Ashika Jim. John Duma comes into this at 8-4. A Jim comes in at 7-3, and John Duma was set to be on the Combat FC 6 card before like the day of weigh-ins. His opponent Mateus Silva had pulled out due to sickness. He was sick.
yeah. It
I
was
think
weight cutting issues. So yeah, it
yeah,
wasn't. Yeah, it was sickness due to weight cutting. Like
yeah,
it was, he was having a really bad cut, and he went to the hospital.
yeah,
And he had said he was willing to, like, hey, if they're willing to do it, like, I'm messed up, I probably shouldn't fight. If they're willing to do it at 145, I'll still take the fight. And I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're
hmm,
Duma, you're the champ, like, what are you going to do, take a
right,
non-title fight 10 pounds heavy after you're like, I mean, he said when he found out, it was at probably 10 o'clock at night the day
yeah,
before the weigh-in, and he said he was laying on the floor of his bathroom just suffering to make the weight. And so he was just like, fuck this guy, I'm not gonna take a
right,
fight. I'm not gonna start rehydrating and take a fight 10 pounds heavy after I've done everything to make the weight. So
exactly, yeah,
it sucked. It sucked when it happens like that. Anytime you lose a title fight, it's terrible. And it's you know it sucks for both guys. They both
absolutely,
wanted the opportunity, they both wanted to go out there and fight. So yeah, Duma, I mean, he's never been in a boring fight.
never,
There's been so many good fights that guy's in. Um, and he's still a relatively young guy. I think he's like 27,
yeah,
right? So he's, relatively young guy, never been in a boring fight, black belt in jiu-jitsu, trying to make his case to get to the UFC. He's trying
yep,
to get on Contender Series this year, right? And he's going out there and he's fighting a guy that was on Contender Series last year.
yeah,
And and a Sheikh he was killing people locally,
oh,
like before he went
absolutely,
on Contender. I mean, he beat 3 guys in a row in about a minute apiece, like less than a
yeah,
minute.
yep. I want to
He
say
was
yeah, and then
it
I
was
mean
3 or 4 in a row. Yeah.
he bounced back after his two losses. He had the two losses, and you said it. Dana White's Contender Series, and then CFFC. He fought Vilson Negroni, I want to say,
Yeah, the current
and
champion. Yeah.
dude, that Negroni is as best as you can find in the regional scene, if you ask me. He should be on his way to the UFC eventually too. But yeah, Jim did get his win. He got his name back in the win column back in March, I want to say. So he's fought, pretty relatively, just a couple months ago. And yeah, you're right, exactly. So regionally, I think he's fought CES a couple times. He's done very well over there. I want to say he has some knockout victories. Just if I'm not mistaken, or if I'm wrong, just very good finishes in general. I don't remember him being much of a decision fighter, but
Yeah.
I remember seeing him fight in CES a couple years ago. Very good fighter. Obviously, he went on to fight the CFFC, the Contender Series. Then he got his win. Now he's back here at Combat FC 7, taking on John Duma. And Rick, you said it. One thing, like I said earlier, the you don't have a young guy taking on. You don't have a guy who's 5-0 taking on a guy who's 1-0. You got guys who are really literally in their same shoes, walking through the
Yeah.
same paths at this point in his career. You got a Jim, obviously, probably a couple fights away from the UFC, but he gets this title fight. He wins
Yeah.
over Duma. That's a
He's trying to
huge
get
win
back.
for him. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. He's got to get back. And Duma, he's right there. And a Jim is a true tough and tested guy who probably helps Duma prove his point once and for all to the UFC. I feel like with Contender Series coming up in the fall, Duma gets his win here. That could be all he needs to get a call to the Contender Series.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely could be. I think. I like the way that you said that, where they're both guys that are in the same place, right? I mean, we see a lot of title fights in the region where, um, where it's kind of obvious who is supposed to win the fight, and even if it's
Right.
going to be a competitive fight or it's going to be a good fight, like you know, you've got one guy who's the up and coming prospect, and you're fighting a veteran who's kind of on the tail end, who's still going to be competitive. You can still, it's not like I'm not saying it's
Right. Gonna
a
give him a
shitty
couple
title
good
fight or
rounds.
any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad title fight. I mean, some of them are bad. Like, let's be honest, some of the title fights are fucking bad.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, like you'll see one where it's like, okay, we've got the obvious prospect who we think is going to win this fight, and then we've got a tough veteran that he's fighting that
Right.
is probably going to lose, but will be a good
Will
test
will
for
give
the.
him a good fight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what we have here,
No.
right? Like if you look at the title fights that we've got, I mean, these aren't guys that are, no one's on their tail end. They're
Every
all on
single
the
one.
ascend. Yeah, and it's they're all guys that are looking to, I mean, again, Jerry, I probably would say he's the one that's probably not. He's not as focused on it as other guys, right? I think
Right. But he never.
he's more about having fun.
Yeah,
But
but at the end of the day, his opportunity might come and he might not
yeah,
even be
he's still
looking
on the
for
rise.
it. You know
Yeah,
what I
he's
mean?
still on the rise, right? So
Yeah.
he might not be chasing the UFC, but
Right.
he's a guy that's still on the rise, and he's still.
Exactly.
So all these guys are on the way up, right? These are all guys they're trying to get to the next level, and they're fighting another guy in that same position, trying to take his shot, right?
Right.
So it's I don't know who's going to win the fight.
Me neither.
I think this is one that, similar to another fight that I talked about earlier. I mean, I think Ashik is probably the better athlete. He's a little more explosive. He's got more power. Um,
Right.
but I mean, Duma's just so fucking hard to get out of there, man.
Duma's tough, man. He's as tough as they come. When you talk about a fighter who has to, a gym, what he's gonna have to do is weather the storm. You know what I mean? You have. There's a big difference when you talk about a guy, who will go in there and give a couple rounds. But I think Duma is the type of guy who will, if he's not going to bring his opponent to deep waters, he's going to survive the deep waters that he gets brought into. You know what I mean? That's what
yeah,
he does. He either brings his opponents into deep waters and makes them suffer, into later rounds and tires them out, or he rises to the occasion and he can weather the storm and find his way to win late in the fight. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
a good
absolutely.
fight.
I
It's
mean,
a really solid
yeah,
fight.
yeah. And again, no matter what happens, it's going to be impressive, right?
Absolutely.
If a Sheik goes out there and stops Duma, it's like it's a holy shit moment, right? Like
Exactly.
it's a wow, I can't believe like
Ashika
what a
Jim just came back.
performance. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, what a performance by a Sheik. He went out there and stopped John Duma,
Right.
right? Like if John Duma goes out there and stops a Sheik, or if John Duma goes out there and wins a 5-round decision, and like again, neither of these guys has ever been in a boring fight. Right.
Exactly.
So if we get, this could be a fight of the year type fight if this thing goes 5 rounds. Right. So, and again, no matter which way it goes, we're going to come out of this saying, wow, what a performance by Duma. He went out there and did XYZ to a gym, or wow. Like there's no way that
Yeah.
either of these guys win. And it's not that, unless of course, like, I don't want to fucking jinx it, but like, unless of course there's like obviously our title fight last time ended in eye
A
poke, right? Like,
DQ.
so
Yeah.
it's right. So as long as it's not like a DQ or something crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Something
mean,
wacky.
yeah, one of the last times I said this was, the second Anderson Silva Chris Weidman fight.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna be amazing no matter what happens, and his fucking leg snaps. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
I know.
So, as long as something weird doesn't happen, and it's just, one of these guys goes out there and
Yeah.
wins, it's going to be
We'll
super
be.
impressive.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's going to
100%.
be a huge feather in their cap, and it's going to be something that gets them both one step closer. So couldn't be more excited for that one. Unfortunately, the belts came in. I was pumped about
Oh,
that.
there you go. Hell yeah,
Oh,
dude.
we ordered the belts in March, and the guy who we order the belts from is like, it seems like no matter when we tell him we need them, we always get them a week before the event.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how far in advance we pay, we always get them a week before the event.
Yeah.
And like, we've been harassing him, like, dude, where are the fucking belts?
Yeah.
Like, our event
Where do
is
they get
coming up.
made?
I think in like Pakistan, I think is where they
Okay.
make them.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so yeah, it was. I mean, and I told the guy our event was this week. I told
Uh-huh.
because we were like,
Yeah.
hey, we need him. We need him no later than this. Our event's on the 17th, so we need
Yeah.
him. No later than the 16th. I think they showed up on the 15th, right? Like it was like,
Holy shit.
you know, yeah, it was.
Dude,
It
next
was.
time, if your show's in March, you're gonna have to tell them it's in April. Or if you're doing it in May, you're gonna have to tell them it's a whole month
Yeah,
before,
yeah, dude.
like
Yeah,
April.
yeah. Well, so we bought like 8 belts this time. So we
Oh,
were
there you
like,
go.
let's not screw around with it. Like we don't want to keep buying 4 at a time and then have to order them multiple
Yeah,
times a
but
year. So
Rick, you do realize if you keep having fight cards with 3 title fights, that those 8 belts are only gonna last you 2 cards.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think we still have one or two kicking around too. Like,
There you go.
so I don't know. I'd have to ask Joe. So yeah, we should at least be all set for the rest of this year. Um,
Hopefully. You never know
so
though,
yeah,
Rick. I know if you had the chance to put together 4 title fights on one card, 5 title fights on one card,
we were supposed to
you're
have
not
4
scared
this
to do
time.
it. What was
Yeah, we was.
the Jan
Yeah,
Oliveira fight.
Jan Oliveira and Sean Lally. So yeah,
Any
that
update
was initially the
any
main
update
event.
on Oliveira? How's he doing? He getting
I
better?
don't believe
Haven't heard
he's.
from him.
Yeah, well, so we've been talking a little bit. So he had some. So he was actually supposed to go train in Brazil with what is their name? My God, Fight Nerds. Is that the right? Is
Oh
that
yeah.
the Brazilian team? Yeah. So
Yeah.
he was
Or
training
Fight
down
Ready?
there.
Maybe Fight Ready? No, Fight Ready's in Arizona. That's like
Yeah. No.
Cejudo's team. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. So it's. I believe it's where the kid who just had that phenomenal win a week or two ago, Ruffy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Young.
Oliveira was in Brazil training with him and and his team, and they were so he had all this stuff planned where he was. I believe he comes back. He might be back now. Like he might have flown back this week or it's early next week. But
Uh-huh.
so his plan was to do 2 or 3 weeks down there leading into this fight. He
Yeah.
already had all the tickets booked. Um, so he still went to Brazil. I mean, he couldn't really work out, but he's like, I've got all the, the hotel situation or wherever he was
Right.
staying. If he's staying at somebody's house, but I've already got all this figured out. I've already got my flights. He was supposed to go to the UFC in
Yeah.
Brazil, and I believe he did go to that with again with his guy that was fighting. So he's like, he's gonna need, he needs eye surgery, and then from there,
Right.
it's like, it's like 30 days no contact, I think is what he said. So,
Jeez.
yeah, I think the plan is, again, even if it's no contact, like it can, he can be out there hitting pads and shit, right? So
Yeah.
it's, he can be getting some cardio in, but he won't be able to spar. So yeah, the plan is to try to get that fight rebooked for September. I
There
know
we
both
go.
guys were open to that, and it looks like, um, assuming there's no complications, and again,
Yeah.
it should be a pretty minor surgery. It's, I wish he would have known, right? And I'm sure he's saying the same thing. Like, I wish I would have known, because he
Right.
spent a month on antibiotics, going
Right.
back and forth to the doctor. He couldn't seem to get just couldn't seem to feel better.
Right.
He couldn't seem to get his eye, and if you have I had obviously not as severe because mine healed in a week, but I had a similar injury.
Yeah.
I had a corneal tear probably, a year or two ago, and it
You
sucked,
said it
man.
was
Like,
you said it was like the worst pain in your life. I remember we talked about it, right?
yeah,
Then it was terrible.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, I
I
was
remember
actually going
that.
to drive myself to the doctor, and I couldn't even pull out of the driveway. I had to walk back
Yeah,
into the
that's
house and tell my wife to drive me. And so
unfortunate.
yeah, it sucked. And
Hopefully
yeah,
Jan's on the right track though. I mean, hopefully he gets his
yeah, he thought he
his
was better. Like
yeah,
he had been training for the fight. He thought he was,
good.
he was in shape. He thought he was ready to go, and he actually found out because he needed, like, there's a suspension in the system, and he needed clearance.
Yeah.
So he needed clearance from an eye doctor. So he had to go back in, and they examined him. And I guess as soon as they blocked the other eye, like his eye test wasn't good. His eye test was all fucked up, and you're
Jeez.
like, dude,
Yeah.
you still can't see. Like
Right.
you're still not, you still don't have good vision in that eye. And then they did
Figure it out.
yeah, they put like the dye in your eye, and they can
Yeah.
see, and they're like, yeah, man, you still have a, your eye's still not
Or
good. You're still gonna
yeah.
tear. So yeah,
Jeez.
they're gonna have to repair that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks. It sucks for him.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's no fun. I mean, I don't think he's in pain anymore, but
Right.
but yeah, it's still a pain.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Still doesn't have
Well,
vision.
absolutely. Well, real quick, Rick, for those who tuned in maybe just a little while ago, I know we had people coming in and out of this, especially on Instagram. Instagram had a ton of people on it tonight. I
Oh,
want to
nice.
say thank you to all of you guys for tuning in. Rick and I love to sit here. We kind of made it like a ritual before every event now. And Rick, we ain't gonna stop, man. Next event, Combat FC8, we'll do it again. Preview shows, they've come in to be a very successful thing. Like I said, a lot of people on tonight, a lot of people on last time. But I have to say thank you to you, because if it wasn't for you putting together these awesome cards, we wouldn't have people tuning in. I think the
Thank you.
fact that the card is so deep, so much excitement, so many great, evenly matched fights, I think it gives people a reason to want to listen to us talk about these fights and get our perspectives. And I know you always have a lot of like insider information, obviously being the matchmaker and working with these guys very closely. Obviously there's a lot of things that you get to pick up on, and intel and stuff like that. So I appreciate it, man. If it wasn't for you putting together these amazing cards, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. If the card wasn't as good as it is, it wouldn't be fun for us to sit here. It wouldn't
Yeah,
be fun for
wouldn't
people
be a
to
2 hour preview show, right?
Right, exactly. It wouldn't be fun for people to take time out of their Friday evenings. Like literally the amount of people that tuned in tonight. Once again, thank you for spending some of your night with us. But yeah, man, all the reason is because Combat FC keeps on putting on these amazing fights and these amazing cards. I can't wait. 3 title fights on the line. May 24th, Combat FC 7 at the Shriners Auditorium in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Any last remarks, Rick?
Just get your tickets now. It's gonna be a fun night. We got some
Absolutely.
cool announcements coming too for where we're gonna be streaming. So it's yeah, we got some fun stuff coming up.
Awesome.
Again, we got the Combat FC Rewind show, the preview show that we're gonna have coming out too.
Oh yeah.
Keep looking at keep looking at our Instagram. You'll get to see that. You'll get to see where that's airing. It's gonna be a very busy 7 days. We got our press conference on Monday, so
Yeah,
I'll be an
I'll
awesome
be
night.
tuning in for that too. The press conference Monday, guys. Everybody tune in. If you need information for that, tune into the combatfc.tv Instagram page, or you can look at Charlie Quinn Media. Charlie Quinn's going to be running the presser on Monday night. I'll be a part of it. Hopefully going to shoot out some questions to the fighters. But yeah, that's it for tonight. Once again, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Combat FC, for helping put this together, putting together the amazing card. And I love speaking to you, Rick, and getting some intel about the card. I appreciate the time tonight, and let's do it, man. Combat FC 7 a week from tonight.
Can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.